This is H.R. 1, all 3,000 pages of it. A lot in this bill. This is what was being called the big beautiful bill, big ugly bill. It's certainly a long bill that I don't think Congress fully read. Members of Congress only had a day or less to actually read the final provisions of this bill. It does a lot. Some might consider the things it does beautiful, some might consider them bad, but some of them are also just mathematical, and that's really what we're here to discuss today, what this bill actually does with regard to the impact on the state budget. Many of you know we began the year with a balanced budget, which I was proud to sign in April. Our state's fiscal year started on July 1st. Not only was it a balanced budget, it was one that had a taper surplus. Every Coloradan was going to get a taxpayer refund. There was about a $300 million surplus based on estimates. And that has all changed with the signature of President Trump on this bill here. And it's important to understand why it changes, because a lot of what the people have talked about in H.R. 1, for better or for worse, are changes to Medicaid and SNAP. Those are in future years, most of them. That will be a budget challenge, some of them for Colorado, for future legislatures, for future governors. Some of them are implementation challenges around how we verify employment. Those are all things that are important and will be done. That's not what has the urgency of what I'm going to be announcing today. What has the urgency of what we're going to be announcing today are the revenue impacts to the current year that we are in, that throws the state budget out of balance, that costs about over $1 billion loss of revenue. And that $1 billion loss of revenue leads to a hole in the budget of over $700 million. Because remember, we had a surplus. Some of it is also affecting the state education fund, other funds, but there is actually a general fund hole, a nearly $800 million shortfall in the current year. Unlike Congress, that can spend whatever they want, this bill, as you know, increased the federal deficit by trillions of dollars. We don't do that here. That's good. That's a problem the federal government has. They need to balance their budget. I've always supported a balanced budget amendment. That's something that we have in Colorado. So we have the mathematical reality to balance this budget for the current year that we are in. The impacts on Colorado are particularly immediate. Our state is a state that largely mirrors federal tax policy. That can be a good thing for taxpayers because it's easier and it takes less paperwork to file taxes. We, in my opinion, don't want to be a state where every individual has to file two entirely different sets of taxes, one for state and one for federal, because there's different deductions and rules. We are not that kind of state. That's an advantage for Colorado. We are not going to become that kind of state, and none of the changes that we're proposing here would make us that kind of state. We want to make sure that for individuals who file their taxes, it's simple and easy. And Coloradans will get the benefits. While this bill has many bad points, there are also benefits to some taxpayers, like no taxes on tips. That happens immediately in Colorado. Colorado is only one of four states that this year, money that's already been earned by Coloradans as tips will not be taxed. So there's a number of changes in here. They're a lot faster. Colorado conforms to federal. It creates a budget deficit for better or worse. The impact on taxpayers depends on your tax situation. You may benefit, you may not. But there is a significant loss in revenue, largely from the corporate tax changes that are in this bill, right? It's not, for instance, the taxes on tips that blows the budget out. It's the corporate tax changes, some of which are real corporate tax cuts. Some of them are just a shift in timing that affects the budget in the current year, like the accelerated schedule for depreciation, one of the biggest drivers of this deficit. Today, we have 11 months remaining in the budget year, and that's very important. That means that cuts, while difficult, can be spread over a longer period of time than the regular course of the legislature. That's why today I'm announcing that I am doing two things. One is we are calling the legislature in for a special session on August 21st. The second is we are implementing a state hiring freeze effective August 27th through the end of the year. And that will affect state positions, except for necessary health and safety positions. We're not freezing firefighters, prison guards, 24/7 facilities. But the vast bulk of state positions will be frozen until next calendar year when hiring will resume. We estimate that will save the state at least $3 million. $3 to $7 million is the estimate of what the hiring freeze will save the state. And I want to thank, of course, our dedicated state employees for their hard work. We are avoiding furloughs and layoffs, and we know that a hiring freeze makes it a little tougher on the folks that deliver services, but we need to show, of course, that we're doing our part to help meet these extraordinary times and the large budget deficit that has been left by H.R. 1. In addition to that, we are calling the legislature in to help figure out how to address this sooner rather than later. And that's important, because if we were to wait till next year, it would be a lot more draconian in terms of cuts or changes when they have to be spread only across 4 months or 5 months of the year, rather than now, which is, again, Colorado begins this year July 1st. We're in our first month. We can effectively spread out the cuts across 11 months of the year, assuming that we're able to implement them for the beginning by September 1st. We're putting our skin in the game and implementing a statewide hiring freeze extended through the end of the year. I would also point out that about 70% of the tax benefits in here went to corporations, and that is the biggest part of what is causing this here today with this budget crisis. So again, while there's legislation that's been passed in Congress that harms our state budget, we know that we in Colorado have to balance our budget, and we're ready to roll up our sleeves and get it done. There are a few other items that are in the call. I just wanted to briefly go over them. And as I've mentioned in interviews with some of you in the past and publicly, none of these other things would have led to a special session. But when we have a special session, we ask ourselves, are there other things that would benefit if the legislature looks at them now rather than waits till January? Is there a benefit to the state in the timing of some other items? And there is, frankly, on several other items. One of those is we want to give the legislature another chance on health insurance premiums in the exchange. They were unable to act in the general session, but that was before we knew how bad the damage was. H.R. 1 ended the tax credits, and the insurers have already published their rates for the exchange, showing an average statewide increase of 28%, in Western Colorado 38%. We can and we should take action to reduce that impact. To be clear, the bulk of that impact is H.R. 1, not including the tax credits. We cannot undo that. I hope Congress still acts on that. There's time, very little time, but they can act in September to do that. But we should, of course, do what we can as a state to prevent hundreds of thousands of Coloradans being tossed off of their insurance. I just had a town hall yesterday with Insurance Commissioner Mike Conway in Eagle County. A great example is a family of 4, middle income in Eagle County, would have their insurance premiums increase from $11,000 to $35,000. Again, very few people would be able to afford $35,000. So many of folks would go onto the rolls of the uninsured, and the cost shifting would lead to increased rates for everybody else who has employer-based health care. So I want to give the General Assembly a chance to talk about that. We also want to give them a chance to update a ballot initiative that was written again before H.R. 1 passed that funds free school lunches for everybody, which I'm of course supportive of free school lunches. We want to expand allowable use after the free lunches are paid for, that the legislature would be able to use some of those funds for the state SNAP match. Again, that's not next year, it's not the year after. I think it's 2.5 years from now when that would become active. But when you go to the voters, that locks it in. So we would, that would have to be changed now. If they were to do it in January, they'd have to go with a whole nother initiative that November. Much better to update the current one if they do that and allow that as a use. There was also some, in my opinion, kind of discriminatory language where they went after Planned Parenthood, a healthcare provider in our state that provides many services. And they were effectively, because they do also provide abortions, even though that's not the bulk of what they do, they were effectively defunded from Medicaid for their non-abortion services. Remember, they never got Medicaid federally for their abortion services, Hyde Amendment, but they do cancer screenings, they do reproductive health care, they are a first-line provider to many families, especially women, some men as well. And so we want to give the opportunity, the legislature to have the opportunity to allow for them to continue to get Medicaid reimbursement for those state services that they provide. And that's better earlier rather than later because real people are affected. And if the legislature weren't able to do this till February or March of next year, that's a good 6-month gap that many people would have in access to health care. And where we can avoid that, we certainly want to do that. We also will be giving the legislature a chance to address the artificial intelligence issue, AI. This is one that legislature has struggled with, and last session didn't quite come up with the changes that opponents can agree on. It's scheduled to take effect February, so that is very little time, right? If the legislature were to come back in January, that gives them very little time. But I would add the real world has even less time, because if it's on the books for February, the state and private sector are moving towards complying now because they don't know what's going to happen in January. And that would cost the state about $6 million. So we do want to save the state $6 million if we can. But furthermore, we want to make sure that this is settled sooner rather than later and give the legislature a chance to figure that out. What adjustments need to be made or changes need to be made are up to them. So I'm asking the General Assembly to come together for a special session at 10 a.m. on August 21st, 2025, addressing the revenue shortfalls of H.R. 1, ensure the continued viability of SNAP, rebalance the state budget, state services, health care, preserve access to reproductive health services, and adjust the AI bill. These are all items that I firmly believe the state will benefit from acting earlier on rather than later on. We've used these calls for extraordinary sessions sparingly in my time as governor. And when there is a clear benefit to the people of Colorado of acting soon, that's why we are calling this session. It would very much be to the detriment of the people of Colorado if the balancing actions were left until only having a few months of the year left to go. The cuts would be more draconian, they would be more difficult, it would be harder to balance the budget. Having the benefit of 11 months is a very important tool for both the governor and for the legislature to take the steps needed to balance the budget. I'm joined by Mark Ferrandino, who's the head of our budget office, who will be here for technical questions if you have those. I'm really confident that by working together, we can continue to carve out the very best path for Colorado. Despite the federal headwinds, despite the challenges of H.R. 1, we certainly embrace the opportunities, but we also live in a real world where we know that we have to balance the budget. And with the budget out of whack because of H.R. 1, we know that it's very important to act early and soon, to not hide our heads in the sand, and to accordingly adjust the state to make government more efficient, make the cuts where necessary, recapture revenues where necessary, and make sure that we can balance our budget for the current fiscal year, as well as set us up for a strong fiscal condition for future years to come. Okay, we'll see everybody soon. It's official. Thank you all for joining us, and we'll be happy to make Mark Ferrandino available for questions, as well as Mike Conway on insurance or other subject area experts. This is all very technical stuff. It's all very technical stuff. And so, again, members of the media and, of course, members of the public are watching, but feel free to ask members of our administration. We can even identify outside experts as well, because this all gets technical pretty quickly. But we're happy to help link you up with any answers on what all this is. And in the meantime, again, we're all living with this big bill here. So thank you.